Typology Tribe, Ian, Morgan, Cron here. I am so glad to be back here in Typology Central with my dear friend Anthony Skinner.
Hey, Ian, how are you doing?
Man, I'll tell you what, I've had a wild 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I have. So I was speaking at the Young Life International Conference. They had about 5,600 people.
Had some of our friends there?
We did. And so in the green room, there was Drew and Ellie Holcomb.
Yeah.
Abner and Amanda from Johnny Swim.
Yeah.
Annie Downs.
Yeah.
I don't know who brought the flu. I don't know who brought the flu into the green room.
Something was incubating.
I'm telling you, man. I'm sure it was like in the M&M bowl. You know what I'm saying? People sticking their fingers in the M&M bowl. Well, I came out of there with something not really good.
Yeah.
And I went from there to do a thing in Connecticut for 3 days. I left there. I came back. I spoke for 2 days in Nashville. I was home again for another day, and then I flew to Edmonton, Alberta. Do you know how cold it was in Edmonton, Alberta?
Tell us.
With the wind chill, 47 below zero. Hold on.
Is that even possible?
Did you know that the Canadians have not invented temperature yet?
Are you sure you went a little further north?
No, dude.
Canada.
I went outside. My lungs hurt. Okay, my lungs hurt.
That's crazy.
It was crazy. So I spoke there for 2 days.
Below.
And then I came back, had a day off, and I spoke at Thistle Farms.
Oh.
So Becca Stevens, Thistle Farms.
Yes.
Organization works with women who've been trafficked, lots of women in recovery.
Yeah.
I spoke for 72 of their women
and
some of their staff. One of the most rewarding days of my Enneagram career.
Oh, my word. What she does is just amazing.
Oh, man. A lot of tears, a lot of just really a lot of insights for me, you know, because I haven't worked with, you know, a population that's largely traumatized and with a lot of people in recovery, et cetera. And coming up on the 29th, I'm speaking at Cumberland Heights Rehab.
Wow.
And, you know, obviously I have a soft spot as someone who's in a 12-step program.
Absolutely.
And I cannot wait. I'm speaking to about 125 of their clinicians. I don't know if we're going to have any of their patients in the room who are going to be learning about the Enneagram, but I am super interested in the Enneagram, addiction, recovery. Like, I just think, for example, if you're a sponsor in a 12-step group, and that could be OA, NA, AA, whatever.
Right.
And you know your sponsee's Enneagram number and your own, like it could accelerate the time in which it takes for you to get to know your sponsee. Right. But you'll also be able to spot, I think, when your sponsee is heading toward a drink or a drug or whatever their thing is. Right. And I'm like, I want to go field test that. Like, you know, I like, you know, I'll just give you one other thing.
Yeah.
Are you getting bored of me yet?
No, this is great.
Because I find myself thrilling. I think, and in fact, I've had a conversation with Bill Haslam, who we had on the show recently, about this. You know, there's, you know, let's face it, you know, the therapy, for the most part, is a upper middle class person's game, right? Like, who can afford $125, $150 out of pocket for 50 minutes to talk about their problems? So it really is for a privileged group. And I keep thinking to myself, obviously the Enneagram can't address major like mental illnesses or stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
But what it could do is help populations that don't have access to good mental health stuff for like marriage stuff or family dynamic problems or self-understanding. And I'm like, well, what would happen if we just started to train people, pastors, social workers, people working in amongst populations that don't have a lot of resources to teach them the Enneagram?
That's amazing.
And you do it for free.
That would be amazing.
Like, they don't have to pay nothing.
Right,
They're just going to learn about themselves, their marriages, and it may at least go a long way toward helping a population that otherwise doesn't have access to mental health care.
Oh, that would be fantastic.
I'm excited about the new things I'm learning
I
about.
love that idea.
And I'm excited that I got to say I did survive 47 below zero in Edmonton, Alberta.
Woo! Man. Well, we're glad to have you back.
I'm glad to be back. I'm glad not to have that green room death plague.
Yeah, slightly. And I mean, you weren't the only one that left with something, I think.
No, in fact, can I just say right now I'm blaming Annie Downs. Annie, if you are listening, I saw your picture on Instagram after you were at the Young Life conference where we both spoke.
Yeah.
You looked like you'd been run over by a car. I saw the picture. I want you to know, thanks for sticking your finger in the M&M bowl.
Okay, so let's tell people about what's coming up in a few weeks.
Oh, dude, man.
Yes.
This is going to be the bomb.
Yes.
On March 21st.
This is the big announcement. People have been waiting for this reveal.
Oh, my gosh.
Because we've talked about what we're doing, but not who's going to be there with us.
That's right. So March 21st in San Diego at the Balboa Theater.
Yes.
We are doing our first Typology Podcast Live review and variety show. This is going to be unlike anything we've ever done before. Yes. Unlike any other live podcast.
Right.
You know who's going to be with us?
Tell us.
Well, number one, we are bringing along with us the Nashville-based, legendary, hysterically funny, but also brilliant composer, Andy Gullahorn, is going to be with us.
Gullahorn.
He is going to bring down the house.
He will.
And
people are going to fall in love with him if they haven't heard him before.
Oh, my gosh. He's amazing. And our live interview guest is...
Yes.
Bob Goff.
San Diego's own Bob Goff in the house.
Can you imagine what that's
awesome.
going to be like?
That's going to be a blast.
Enneagram 7.
It's going to be a party.
In the house.
Yes.
Who else knows what's going to happen?
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
I mean, this is our first time doing a live podcast.
Yeah, it's going to be cool.
So, frankly, people can come and watch to see if the wheels fall off. I mean, it's going to be worth it, right? It's like, totally. We don't know if this is going to work, and if it doesn't, that might be as entertaining as if it did.
That's right. That's right. So everyone, make sure you go to typologypodcast.com to get your tickets. That's TYPOLOGY podcast.com. And I believe you can even get some special VIP passes as well.
That's right. Yep. March 21st, Balboa Theater, San Diego, California. Please join us.
Absolutely. It's going to be a fantastic time. All right, let's turn our attention to today's program, Ian. We are going to get back into the mailbag.
Mailbag.
Woo! So I'm going to hit you with some questions.
Okay,
pull it out of the hat.
So these are questions that people have been sending in. We get a lot of these.
We get a lot of them via email, via Instagram. So I'm going to hit you up with a couple of questions.
All right.
Again, unrehearsed, and you're going to respond.
All right.
All right. So here we go. This is from Emily Nelson. She says, I think I broke my type.
That's like when someone says, I think I broke the internet.
Okay, Emily starts with a primer here. Is it possible to repress your type? She writes, I was a quintessential 7 in high school and college. I was so fun, future-looking, adventure-having, finding silver linings to deal with pain. Then trauma hit me between the eyes. A gentleman left me for another woman. He said he knew he didn't love me because he had that love for her. No silver lining could be found, and my 7-ness cooled way down. I know it's still in there, but it feels like the tools that I once used to enjoy and embrace life were smashed. Wow, this is tough. She writes, I look a lot like a 6 now. Can you speak to trauma that happens in adulthood and how it might disturb our number? I don't feel like I moved to an unhealthy 7. I feel like I completely set 7 aside to try on other numbers, like 3 and 6. Is that possible? Any suggestions for getting back to a healthy 7?
Well, first, Emily, I'm sorry for your troubles.
Yes.
As they say in Ireland. Trauma is a very complicated subject with the Enneagram, but I'm not even sure. I mean, I think this is what might be called a microtrauma, and meaning I think it sounds to me, Emily, like you're having a normal reactive depression as a result of a significant loss, right?
Right.
And when we, regardless of type, experience life events that, are psychologically depleting, it doesn't mean that our number changes. It means that we do what everybody does in that situation, is we oftentimes have reactive depressions. We lose our appetite. We have trouble sleeping. We lose or gain weight. We find that we have less joy about things in the future, right? Less hopefulness about the future. Well, I'm actually doing right now off the top of my head is giving criteria for what a major depression is, right? So I would just say, one, get to a therapist. Try to work this out with somebody. Once you get up in your own head, it's so hard to figure stuff out on your own.
Right.
Number two, I would say, you have to practice, as I often say here on the show, unconditional self-friendship.
Yes, I love when you say that.
Life is hard. Life is difficult. As Scott Peck started The Road Less Traveled, life is difficult. The sooner you accept it, the better off you'll be.
Right.
And that's not a cold-hearted statement. It is to say that life is difficult.
Yeah.
And by the way, for 7s, breakups are very hard. You'll read that in Enneagram literature.
Why is that?
Because it's almost impossible to find a silver lining for it. And none of us do well with abandonment. Right. And so breakups are hard for 7s when they're in love, especially if they can't recoup the relationship.
Right.
And they just actually have to face the pain and the grief of it. So I would just say, be patient, practice unconditional self-friendship, get to a therapist who you can work this out with, and have hope that, in fact, if you are, in fact, a 7, right, that the beauty of that number the green shoots of it will eventually return. Yeah. And I'm also not surprised on Emily's remark about 6, simply because, when a 6 is in a great space, there's a little bit of anxiety, worst case scenario thinking, and paranoia. Like, is this going to happen again? Right. Hypervigilance. I just think any number would feel that way after getting burned in a relationship.
Sure. Okay. Thank you, Ian. And thanks so much, Emily, for sending that in.
And thank you, Emily, for being so vulnerable.
Yes.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Our next question is from Rod Mendoza. My question is about the Sunny 4. He says, you have referenced that a couple times on your show, but have never expounded on what that exactly means. I can't find very much information as to the countertype of the 4 online, so I was wondering if you could explain that a little deeper.
Yeah, so, actually, Beatrice Chestnut and I have had this conversation many times about the Sunny 4. The reason it took me 10 months to figure out my type is because I totally resonated with the unconscious motivation of the 4, which is the need to be special and unique as a way to compensate for and to recapture the quote-unquote missing piece or the fatal flaw that the 4 can't name, doesn't know how to name, but feels like they're missing this piece, and it's somehow or another their fault. So a social 4 is kind of the 4 that everybody always talks about, right? The social 4 is that, the darky, broody, cloves. I always laugh and say the cloves cigarette smoking guy reading poetry.
Right. With the beret on.
But there's 2 other subtypes. Now, when it comes to subtypes, by way of editorial, one of the reasons it's super important to know them and there's 2 numbers that you must know the subtypes for, 4s and 6s.
Okay.
Because those 3 subtypes for each, the 4 and the 6, are so different they might as well be different numbers.
Wow.
That's how different those subtypes are. So the self-preservation 4, the name we often give them is tenacity. The reason that it's called it's the countertype. So in each of the 3 subtypes under each number, there is a countertype.
Right.
Okay. So the self-preservation 4 is the counter 4 of the 4 subtypes, and it's often really hard to identify this person as a 4. They experience envy like all the other 4s do, but they communicate that envy and suffering to others far less than the other 2 4 subtypes.
Okay.
They're known, so think of it this way. The countertype self-preservation 4,
which is what you are, by the way, right?
Which is what I am.
Yeah.
Tends to suffer silently. The social 4 tends to suffer aloud.
Wow.
The sexual 4 makes other people suffer.
Right.
Okay? So I hope that helps a little bit. And so because the envy is less apparent in the 4, what they tend to do in their behavior is they work hard to get what others have that he or she lacks. Okay? So instead of getting all hung up in their longing in a way that prevents them from taking action, because like a social 4 can just get stuck. Right. Up in their imagination, not sure what to do with their lives, talking a lot about their projects and artistic things they're going to do, but they get stuck. Self-preservation types do not get as stuck. Okay? They actually get off their rear ends and strive to get the unavailable, the unattainable.
Wow, okay.
And so they don't communicate the same sensitivity and shame that the other 2 types do. Yeah. When I test on an Enneagram test, for years when I would use them, and of course there's all different qualities of tests out there, I always come out as a 3 or a 7.
That's amazing.
Right? Wow. So it's the countertype. Yeah. It's quietly long-suffering, and they will work hard to try and achieve and succeed in order to compensate for the missing piece, and they can very often look like a 3 or a 7.
Wow. Okay. Good. All right. Thank you, Rod.
Hey, Typology Tribe, I want to take a moment to thank one of our sponsors for helping us bring you what I hope is great content every week. Now, you all know, obviously, I'm a psychotherapist, and so I'm a big proponent of counseling. So, whether you feel like something is interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving certain goals, counseling is a great tool to help identify what those blocks are and then work through them. Yet, and I think probably many of you know this, finding a therapist can sometimes feel intimidating. Here comes the good news. BetterHelp offers online counseling at your own time and your own pace. You can schedule secure video or phone sessions plus text and chat with your therapist when it's convenient for you. That's huge, right? These are licensed professional counselors who specialize in things like depression, anxiety, stress, relationships, LGBT matters, trauma, and grief. BetterHelp has counselors available worldwide and have over 3,000 U.S. licensed therapists across all 50 states. And get this, if you're not satisfied with your counselor for any reason, you can request a new one at any time at no additional cost. Best of all, it's a truly affordable option. And as a special offer for Typology listeners, BetterHelp is offering 10% off your first month with the discount code Typology Podcast. So why not get started today? Go to BetterHelp.com/TYPOLOGYPODCAST. Simply fill out a questionnaire to help them assess your needs and get matched with a counselor you will love. Again, that's BetterHelp.com/Typology Podcast, TYPOLOGYPODCAST. BetterHelp.com/Typology Podcast. Check them out.
All right. This next one is from Deanna, and she says, I have recently learned of the Enneagram, and I believe I'm a 9, but I also could be a 6, or I am a 9 with unhealthy 6 tendencies. I find that both avoiding conflict and being safe and secure are high motivators for me. How can I properly determine which one I really am?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? Because 9s and 6s share a line.
Right.
When a 9 is not doing well, they go to the low side of 6. So sometimes, you could say to someone like this, well, how long have you been under stress? How stressed are you?
Oh, it's a good question.
How long, you may be sitting in the low end of 6 for a long time and yet you feel like you're 9,
Right.
So some self-reflection is in order there. So there are some similarities between 9s and 6s. They can be really loyal, super caring, very supportive, great team players, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
6s and 9s, though, have some real differences, though, as well. 9s tend to merge with others and trust other people easily.
Okay.
6s tend to stand apart, and they're more suspicious of people than 9s are, especially in the beginning of a relationship, until they get enough data to determine whether or not someone is trustworthy.
Okay.
9s don't rock the boat people, right? They go along to get along, and they over accommodate, and they're more compliant than 6s, right? 6s are by nature more mistrustful of other people.
Okay.
So and you know, 6s are probably a little bit more focused than 9s are. 9s are pretty easily distracted, while 6s usually are more alert in their focus of attention, particularly on potential threats.
You know, as you're talking about 6s and their focus of attention and 9s being a little more easily distracted, I'm reminded of the story of our good friend Randy Williams and the lawnmower in the backyard.
Oh my gosh.
It's a good example of a 9.
Well, that's a good example of a 9 who gets easily distracted, right? So Randy, who is a dear friend, one day I show up at his house, and he's got there's a riding mower on his front lawn, and it's just running and nobody's on it. There's nobody on the mower, right? And half the lawn is done.
Right.
So I go into the house, and I'm like, Randy, where are you? And he said, I'm back here. And I go back there, and he's sitting at his computer. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And he's like, I said, you got a riding mower running outside. And he's like, oh, crap. Like he's like, oh, wait a minute. It's like he woke up from a trance,
right.
You know?
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, I came in the house to get my wife's a phone number for my wife. And then I noticed that there was a letter that, you know, that needed to be something was in it that I needed to take care of.
Right.
And I just sat down and started like doing it. Now that, my friend, is called a diffuse habit of attention.
I just totally forgot about the lawnmower.
Totally forgot about it.
That's great. Okay. Next question from Colin. He says, I believe I've heard you say on the show before that 9-wing 8s are the most complex number on the Enneagram. Could you give a little more depth to the motivations and behaviors of somebody who may be this type?
Okay, so I don't remember saying it was the most complex number on the Enneagram.
All right.
I would say that some of the more complex combinations would be 3-4 or 4-3.
Mm-hmm.
I would say another complicated one is 5-4 because they can tend to be more quirky.
Right.
Than other types. But here's what I will say about 9s and 8s. You have a 9 peacemaker, right?
Right.
With a challenger wing.
Wow.
Okay? So you've got someone who's asleep to their anger.
Right.
Right? But they've also got this side that's way plugged into their instinctual drives. So what happens, and this is what a friend of mine used to say this about their daughter, who was a 9 with an 8 wing. Her daughter would come home all the time and say, my 8 wing did something today that my 9 is going to take weeks to fix.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Yeah.
So what happens is that 8 aggressive side can come out, and then the 9 part of you is like, oh my gosh, I have to go smooth over that conflict.
Right.
So it's not that it's complicated, it's just that there are two forces at work in that combo that can, seem at loggerheads with each other.
And Ian, you touched on this a little bit, but talk some more about how this is all coming from the instinctual drive.
Right. So you have an 8.
Yeah.
Where the instinctual drive is coming straight out.
Totally.
Then you have the 1 where the instinctual drive is being tamped down.
Right.
And then you have the 9 that's asleep to its instinctual drives.
Right.
So you've got an 8 who runs on 240 volts next to a 9 that's running on about 90 volts next to a 1 who's at normal 120. You know what I'm saying?
That's great.
What
a great way to put it.
So it's complicated, but it's not the most complicated, I don't think.
Okay. This next question is from Bonnie. I was wondering if you could explain more about countertypes. I think I could be a countertype 3, hate it but true, and I'm having trouble finding information about countertypes.
All right. It's a great question. And to answer it, I'm going to go to the queen of subtypes, which is Beatrice.
Yes.
And I'm actually going to quote something from her book because it's a much more succinct answer than the one I would give.
Okay.
Okay. She writes, for each of the 9 types, there is a countertype subtype. In every case, with each of the 9 points of the Enneagram, there are 2 subtypes that go with the flow of the energy of the passion, and there is one that is upside down, one that doesn't look like the other 2 subtypes and goes against the main energetic direction of the passion. This counter-passional type is called the countertype of the 3 subtypes. For example, the counterphobic sexual 6 is the most well-known of the countertypes. It's a 6 who's unafraid. The passion of the 6 is fear, but the sexual subtype goes against fear by being strong and intimidating as a way of coping with fear. So maybe the best way to say this is that the countertype goes against the natural flow of that type's passion and doesn't look like what one would expect that type to look like.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So remember we were just talking about self-preservation 4s.
Yeah.
We're called the sunny 4s.
Yeah.
We actually don't have that kind of externalized envy and suffering on the outside. It looks almost the opposite of it, but the unconscious motivation remains the same.
That's good. Okay. Our next question is from Matt, and this came via Facebook. Thanks, Matt. The question is, how do different types process grief, and what is the best way to support them through the process? Obviously, that would take up way too much time to do all 9 numbers, so why don't we pick 3 and 4 and contrast those?
Ooh, 3 and 4, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I think for 3s, like they instantly want to know and set goals pretty quickly. They're very action-oriented people. They want to know what to do, not how to be in the grief.
Wow.
But what to do with the grief, right? And they want it to be sort of task-oriented. Give me a checklist. What do I have to do? Let me get through Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief, do a check off of all 5. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When in reality, what they need to do is, like for a 3, would be to slow down, let in their feelings, including sadness, depression, like I was just mentioning Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief.
Right.
To move through those stages naturally without saying, okay, I'm done with that. Moving on to bargaining. Okay,
Right.
I'm done with bargaining. Now I'm
Yes.
into depression. Okay, check. Next I'm going to go on to is acceptance. Check.
Yeah.
It's like that's just not how grief works.
Right.
Like grief's a very complicated emotion. I would argue that grief is the most difficult emotion to work with.
Wow. Yeah.
Because it's such a helpless feeling.
Yes.
There's like, well, what do I do with it? It's
Right.
like, no, actually, what's it doing with you is the question.
That's
Well,
good.
the question is, will you allow grief to have its way with you?
Wow.
And then when it's done doing its work on you, it will pass on its own. The 3 doesn't want to rush through it. Like a 3 should not try to cut corners with grief. You can't cut corners. If you do, you're actually just elongating the process.
Right.
Let it have its way with you. Right. I think with 4s, what they really need to focus on, like 4s, grief it would not be an emotion that they're not they're not going to be, particularly a social 4, is not going to have as hard a time with grief as other numbers because they're more familiar with darker emotions. Right. But what they have to do is learn to stay focused on what's positive in the present moment. To stay as best they can in a posture of gratitude, to not allow themselves to be sucked up into the vortex of self-absorption, poor me, thinking a lot about the past and what was ideal about the past before the event, or thinking about the future and what the ideal is going to be into the future. So to your point, we don't have time to go through all 9 numbers.
Yeah.
I would recommend, there's an article out there that's probably would be useful. It's Dr. David Daniels.
Okay.
And if you just typed in the Enneagram, loss, and grief,
okay,
he does a pretty good job of walking people through how each type deals with loss and grief, particularly around death. But I think it would be useful across the board for whatever the source of the grief might be, whether it's a breakup or issues with loss of a job, etc.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you, Matt.
Hey everybody, one of the lessons I've learned over the years is that not everybody benefits from a traditional 50-minute counseling session. And this is why some people can go to couples therapy or personal counseling for a long time and never really get anywhere. This is why I'm such a believer of intensive counseling and my friends at Restoring the Soul in Colorado, created by my longtime friend Michael Cusick to help couples or individuals experience deep change in half-day blocks over 1 or 2 weeks. Now listen, if you can't wait months or years to get to the bottom of an issue or to experience breakthrough, you need to get in touch with my friend Michael and his extraordinary team of counselors at Restoring the Soul. If you're looking to get out of the rut you're in, but can't wait months or years, call Restoring the Soul today for a free consultation with Michael's staff. Call 303-932-9777 and learn how their intensive counseling process can help you. As a special bonus, just for Typology listeners, make sure to visit www.restoringthesoul.com/typology to download their PDF called 5 Ways Unaddressed Trauma May Be Derailing Your Relationships.
Next question is from Kendall.
Hello, Kendall.
And this is on wings. He says, is a wing something that is static? Like I identify as a 6-wing 5, but I also have some 7 tendencies at times. And I've heard people use language about accessing a certain wing. As a 6, do I have access to both 5 and 7, or am I one or the other? Could you speak to that?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is a complicated question, right? Mm-hmm. You have a dominant wing.
Okay.
Right? And you can have a wing, by the way, that is so heavy that sometimes it might confuse you with your dominant type.
Wow.
You know, like I'm a 4 with I have what's called a heavy 3 wing.
Okay.
So I can tell you, for example, growing up in Greenwich, Connecticut, which was a very 3 culture.
Right.
I probably always would have self-identified as a 3. Mm-hmm. But that's because culturally it was expected of me to be more of a 3 than a 4.
Right. Yes, that makes sense.
Very heavy 3 wing. I also have access, though, to 5 stuff, and you've seen me be a 4 very much with a 5 side.
Yeah.
So I think what those 2 numbers represent are additional resources.
Okay.
And so I can go to 3 for some resources. I can go to 5 for some resources, you know, that will help me in as a 4, right?
Right.
But I do have a dominant wing.
Yes.
That is, I'm particularly, I don't know if gravitate toward, but maybe rely on more. But I can certainly go to my 5 wing and grab resources there. For example, when I'm writing a book and I'm doing tons of research and I'm doing a lot of work, I can be very introverted.
Right.
I love solitude, and a lot of that draws from the resources of the 5.
Right.
You know, it's a great question, and there's a lot I could say about wings.
Yeah.
But let's just leave it at this. Those 2 numbers that are adjacent to yours, one is your dominant wing, but you can access resources for growth from both of them.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kendall. And our last question of the day comes from Marissa. She's a 1, and she says, for ones who are struggling with anger, can you give any resources to help with this?
Yeah, it's a great question, and all 1s struggle with anger.
Right.
So remember, I've said in the past, even I think earlier in the show, that 8s externalize anger. Man, It's just straight up, goes straight out. For 9s, they go, what anger? They're out of touch with their anger.
Yeah.
What 1s do is they repress anger. They tamp it down. Okay. In the mind of a 1, anger is inappropriate. It's not something good people either have, no less express openly.
Wow.
Okay. So I think one of the things that a 1 has to do is learn how to appropriately talk about anger in the moment.
Oh, that's good.
And resist the temptation to keep pushing it down.
Right.
This is called reaction formation. This is the defense mechanism of 1s. They don't want to push it down and bring up its opposite, right? In order to deny their own anger, right? So what a 1 has to do is pick up on when they're angry about something and express it in a way that's really positive. Now, another thing a 1 can do is really try to tap into the high side of 7.
Okay.
Right? Which is where they go when they are feeling secure. When they do, what it does is it relaxes their grip on some of their moralizing, and it just chills them out a little bit, right?
Right.
They become people who affirm pleasure as a good thing.
Oh, that's good.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And just they allow life to unfold without any judgment and without manipulation. And as they can learn to release their need for things to be perfect, that also will help attenuate anger. But I just think it's important for 1s to get angry about what they're angry about.
That's good.
In the moment.
Yeah.
Express it in a way that's useful,
right,
and helpful.
Yeah.
Not in a way that doesn't come off as critical and judgmental. So, for example, with the 1, I think 1s, when they express anger, this is true for all of us, using I feel statements.
Right.
Not you make me feel angry.
Right.
No, that's not true. No one makes you feel angry. You make you feel angry.
Yes.
Right? Don't give people that much power.
Right.
Learn to say, I feel angry when
right,
you do X, Y, and Z.
Right.
I feel angry in this moment because
right,
and have it be more of a neutral expression of anger, not one that's finger wagging.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
But again, just important for 1s, don't tamp down the anger and bring up the opposite emotion or expression to mask it. Because 1s will try and mask anger with so for example,
that's good. Yes.
Sometimes a 1 will get mad about something and they'll be looking at you with a smile on their face.
Right.
And they'll be very gracious.
Right.
And you'll pick that up and you realize you're pushing down the rage.
Yes.
And bringing up an opposite emotion and self-expression in order to, you're tamping down and masking anger.
Right.
So don't mask it. Don't tamp it down. Right?
Oftentimes everybody already knows, right, on some level.
Everybody knows.
Yeah.
When a 1 has kind of got that gracious smile on their face,
it's like,
but
okay,
their eyes are daggers. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I just think for 1s, they have to learn to just get real about their anger. And when they can, I mean, just get over there to 7, where you can affirm pleasure in the moment and let go of the grip on your tendency to be moralizing.
Yeah, that's good. Great. Well, that's our last question for the day.
That's it.
Yeah, we're done already.
Wow.
Yeah.
This was awesome. When are we going to do this again? I love that.
Oh, this is now officially a regular thing.
So what do people do to get their questions to us?
Hey, we've made that real simple. Just email us at typology@ianmorgancron.com. Again, that's typology@ianmorgancron.com. Hey, we'll collect those emails, toss them in the hat, pull them out, and answer some on our very next mailbag episode.
Yeah, man. Thanks, everybody, for throwing in your questions.
Ian, what is that you always say at the end of every episode?
Yeah. Well, you know. Remember the words of the great Oscar Wilde.
Be yourself.
Everybody else
is already taken.